Hello, everyone. I'm GM Jeff Ball, and welcome to Attack of Opportunity, the show where I try to interview people, but it ends up being a discussion because I always got to get my 2 cents in, and well, that's why it's called Attack of Opportunity. But no one ever gets it. I really got to change the name of the show. But thanks to a certain, shall we say, gentleman with the initials of JB from a certain god of frog-like games. This gentleman's reached out to me before, and I was so happy to interview a writer. Now he sent me fresh fish. No, he sent me a wonderful gentleman. Please welcome to the show from Gaming Ballistic, Mr. Douglas Cole. Doug, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jeff. It's always great to talk games with interested people.
Yes. Greetings from Canada. Well, North America, because technically our podcast network is Canadian and U.S. driven by our cast members across the border. There's one cool thing. The internet can go across the border. Personally, people can't right now, but the airwaves can. And I really like the fact that gaming is a multinational ambition, and we talk to people around the world, and of course our 70% audience in the US. But of course, the first victimized question I always like to ask everyone we have on the show, Doug, is how did you first know you were a geek, a gamer, one of us?
So that's an excellent question. I was exposed to Dungeons and Dragons, specifically advanced D&D, by a friend of mine when I was about 10. I had just moved into a new neighborhood and I was making friends, and this guy's dad was a stockbroker and he had all the cool toys. He had the IBM PC, not just the real one, the one with the made all the noises, and the disk drive would make the noise and all that. And he was a coder, and the father was a coder, and the house was huge, but he had all of the books. And so he introduced me to this. And I had always been, lived the nerd life, I guess, but I had never really been exposed to this fantasy role-playing thing. And it just, I can't think of how many nights I spent in my room after I finished my homework designing castles, specifically with the information out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and a keep and a bastion wall. And it just exposed me to all of this stuff. And I was like, hey, I'd like Dungeons and Dragons. I asked my parents. They're like, what? They got me for Christmas, I think it was that year, the red and blue box with Keep on the Borderlands and Isle of Dread. And as time went on, I fell in with a group of people, and they wound up being big gamers, and we played all sorts of stuff. I swear we made characters, actually, I should say, for many, many games. We played relatively few. Many games. There was always a new campaign. We'd all get together, we'd make characters, and then someone else had a better idea the next weekend. So we'd make new characters, and maybe we'd play one session, and I got this new game, it's called Bushido, or I got this new game, it's called Space Opera, or I got this new game, it's called Robot Warriors, or hey, here's a game called Gurps. You don't need any rules after this. And then we played this awesomely epic Warhammer fantasy role-playing campaign, the Empire in Flames campaign, I think. Something's Rotten in Kislev, and Power Behind the Throne, I think, might have been one of those. Anyway, we played at least once a week all summer long. And that was my first epic role-playing experience. And I didn't run games much then. I started to run games when I got to college.
Well, since we're talking like a practical life of gaming, how long would you say you've been a gamer? And I also got to ask you, when you mentioned the IBM, can you date that? Because I'm always on about how Dad got us a VIC-20 in 1981, and it's like, but Commodore 64 was the cooler computer, but we only have VIC-20.
So funny you should mention the C64. I got to know this gentleman in 80. I think I got to know him in 80 or 81, about then. So he had one of the first IBM PCs. I think it was another year or so where we got our first computer, and it was a Commodore 64.
Cool.
Yeah. So I've been playing since 1980. I was about 10. maybe 80 or 81. I was about 10 when I started. So I've been gaming for almost 40 years.
Oh, you're showing our age. Like, well, I
Yes,
guess I started. Well,
yes.
I had to jump on the IBM comment because it's just like,
Yep. Yep.
um, so that was a lot of systems crammed into like 30 seconds to 2 minutes of explanation. So you're sort of a renaissance man of the gaming experience, because most people are exposed to 3 in
Right.
10 years. Or you have the diehard, like you said. Again, something always happened at our table is we were always playing the same game, but a movie would come up. Oh, got this great idea. Let's switch everything here. You sell everybody on the idea, right? You're talking like, not only is there a very impressive bookshelf behind you, might I add, for those of you that can't see for our podcasting audience, you're talking that you crammed all that into one summer, or you're talking you crammed all that up until college?
Up through college. So that would have been, I didn't play anything. That's not true. Howard had Gamma World, and we dabbled in that for like one session and then moved on. But when I got with the group that I kind of got to know in middle school all the way through when we all sort of split for college, we played a lot of different games. That was when I got introduced to the Star Wars role-playing game, the old D6 system by West End Games.
Yeah, the WEGs. Yeah.
Yeah. Still one of my favorite rules light games that has just enough structure to allow you to be awesome and not get in the way. Right?
Yeah. I played
it.
I remember I played it. It actually spawned, those fond memories spawned our first podcast. We were trying to do Mummy's Mask, and it was cursed, quite literally. And we ended up playing Star Wars, and we ended up going with Saga, not the WEG. But it was playing that old D6 system under some old friends, and I was a player, never the DM for Star Wars. That was really the fallback to like, okay, if this project is failing, let's do something that, we didn't go for the what everybody knows, because Saga was a dead system by the time we got into it 4 years ago with Flight Games. It was comfortable. It was the comfy blanket with all those memories of playing the WEG, the D6, right? Now, if you don't know, the WEG was a pool of D6 dice, but they had DCs. The DC for using your lightsaber was 20, and if you didn't hit it, you could hurt yourself. WEG was cruel. Then they had the actual D20 is following into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. They had D20 system. They had D20 revised, then Saga system, and of course the Fantasy Flight Games that's out now. Oh, he's gone for his bookshelf. I've inspired him.
Oh yeah, got to get the bookshelf.
Well, we are on the tail end of May 4th.
There we go.
Oh, look at this. He's holding up. What do you got there? I see.
This one is the original one, and this one is the Dark Empire source book, which followed the Dark Empire comic arc. From Dark Horse Comics, a fantastic extension that followed after the Zahn trilogy of books.
Right on.
Yeah, really cool.
So, next question for you, sir, because like I said, we get going about Star Wars, and it just happens to be on the 4th, and it's like, so, what did you do? Yeah, so look, The Bad Batch just launched on Disney. I have got to watch that. Oh, I happen to be shooting episode 1 of season 4 for our We Shot First podcast this Friday, and that will be dropping in a couple of weeks. Plug. So excited about Star Wars, but we do have an agenda, Mr. Cole and I, today, and we need to sort of keep trucking along to get all the check boxes filled. So as much as I'd love to talk about that for a while, let's ask your next question, sir. Looking back and also saying, well, DMing does count as an answer to this, by the way. Do you have a favorite class, race, alignment, or personality type that you like to play, or did you just love being behind the screens? Was there something that just felt right? Either the guys kept asking you to do it, or that it was like your go-to?
I loved when I was playing early on. I loved and still love being the scout, sniper, ranger type. Get out in front. Range weapons, even my Pathfinder thief that I played for a little bit wound up being a rogue / archer. So that was always I always liked to play the pilot guy too. Then I then I read at some point The Deed of Paxtonarian. And ever since I was exposed to a paladin done right, I love playing paladins and holy warriors.
Right on. Right on. Now you mentioned, I just said we're not going to do this, but who cares? We got to do this.
No,
You said pilot. You're talking Star Wars, aren't you? The guy that gets blamed for everything, because if you have a freighter with 5 guys and you're piloting, everything's your fault. And if you happen to be in an airspeeder and flying through something like Coruscant with a lot of traffic, and you blow through a Winnebago and destroy some small alien family, apparently it's your fault. I'm not saying that happens to me when I roll a 1, but apparently that could happen. So I'm curious, why the pilot?
I was obsessed with General Charles Yeager and flying fighter jets and the right stuff. If my parents hadn't really leaned on me to dissuade, I would have attempted to go to the Air Force through the Air Force Academy and fly jets. Probably best that I didn't, in retrospect. But that was my dream as a kid, and so I was always, yeah. I was always wanting to be the pilot. Oh my God.
Not only did I used to play Jaeger's jet games, you know what kept me out of the Air Force? My eyes. And of course, apparently you have to be good at math. I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm a dungeon master. I'm the math wizard. And then like, yeah, well, you kind of botched grade 11 math. Okay, fine. So that kept me out of the Air Force. But no, dude, I'm totally feeling you. Like when Rogue Squadron, the new version hit, I'm just pining away for that game. I've got no time to play it. But look at that! When did we meet? An hour ago? Seriously, we're talking 2 days of emails from John, and poof, we had like two to 10 minutes to get the tech off the ground. So it is. This is why I love this show, because like you just can't go to conventions anymore, or I just can't. And you get to meet gamers that happen to be close to your age. Okay, but actually, I love meeting all walks of life on this show and in person. I have video shot on my phone this very day, driving down a highway, and I look in my rear view, and there's a DeLorean behind me, an actual DeLorean. Yes, the stainless steel car from Back to the Future, in case you're not following me, okay? So I'm like, how do I get a picture of this car? It's behind me. So a gas station comes up, and I'm going, please pull over, please pull over, please pull over. He didn't. So I speed up to put some distance behind me and the DeLorean, but between me and the DeLorean, right? I didn't break the speed limit. I just sped up, because luckily we were at a light. You know what I'm saying? Changes. Okay, sure. And I go through the light, and then they come along, and it's like, okay, I've got some time. Let's get up to 80 kilometers, whatever the mile per hour. Get some distance. Pull over the curb, right? And then I couldn't get my phone out and get out of the vehicle quickly because I was at work. So I just kind of like pulled the phone up, and it drove by, and I actually have that footage. I'll have to send you that in an email, unless you care to dare me to share. Actually, I got really curious. I have held up things in front of the phone before. You guys see that?
Yeah.
There it goes. There it goes. You see that?
Yep. I got it.
Okay, what?
It was brief and a little. There we go. That's actually the best.
We'll let it replay.
Yeah.
There it is. Oh,
that worked.
Oh, you know what?
That worked.
Hang on, the camera's on you. I know. Forgive my obsession, but look, people, at DeLorean, real life. Yeah. That's where he ended up, in Canada somewhere. All right, sorry.
No.
Back to the matter at hand. I told you there would be tangents. Back to the matter at hand. So you're playing all the way into college. So it's obviously become more than a hobby, or it is like the hobby, I feel you. But what was the inspiration to actually start on creating something, as opposed, and I don't mean like, I made this world homebrew for the gang, No,
I understand.
I've been writing and working on this time for like all, the type of thing. I mean, actually like getting something out there to be loved and judged, unfortunately, by the general public. When did that little nugget enter your brain?
So I had, I guess you could say, to keep the fighter pilot analogy going, I had a long taxi before takeoff. I started getting into making things really through Gurps rec.frp.gurps, because that was the old Usenet group where I could post some of my vehicles designs. I was obsessed with David Pulver's GURPS vehicles when it first came out in both editions. And that's where I started to interact with the community more. And while it sometimes has maybe a reputation for being kind of a tough hill to climb, the GURPS community has always been welcoming of new people and input. And so, you get to know some of the people and you interact. And then at some point, Pyramid Magazine, I was like, let me try writing an article. And so, the advice was to start small, and I didn't. So what I did, though, and this will actually tie in. I think maybe my first thing was a very short rules modification for the old Steve Jackson games, Frag.
Okay.
I did a little half-page thing called Camping Out, which was basically, can you wait and shoot the guy as he crosses? Can you camp out on something and set up effectively an aim maneuver so that if someone crosses your path, you can shoot him and interrupt his movement. But I also my article was that I did another short one called 10 Hut, which took the GURPS rank concept, 5 points a level for rank, and broke it down to cover all of the real world Army, Marine, Navy ranks, so that you could not be around a sergeant or maybe sort of a lieutenant or captain, but you could spend the points on the rank and have it 1-to-1 to improve verisimilitude. And you have to understand, this was in my there is no such thing as too much detail phase.
Okay.
Which I feel like I've matured out of, maybe due to time, maybe due to interest, maybe due to wisdom. We can figure that out later. But then I hit with what wound up being my first mention in TV tropes, because I wrote an article called Internal and Terminal Ballistics for GURPS, which took chamber pressure and barrel length and the diameter of the chamber and the length of a cartridge and blah, 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 and said, okay, when you get to the end of this, you have a projectile coming out and you do lots of math and you get a self-consistent damage scale. And here's another way to do blah, 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 more math. And this gets you all the stats that you would want for the projectile. Tumbling, fragmenting, yada, yada, yada. And now you understand where Gaming Ballistic came from.
Cool. I'm actually a big fan of the Sniper Elite series, World War II guy walking around, and you put everything on real ballistics, where the old World War II bolt action rifles, you have to suffer the bullet dropping. There's crosswinds and everything, and they just have the very simple, crosshairs and meters kind of wavering, not a lot of math, but some low-tech gadgets to sort of, and you're trying to take down a foe. And it's like my golf game. I have a terrible slice, and I would turn like 60 to 90 degrees, and people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, wait for it. Right? And the ball will go up, and finally go way over there, because like if I face forward, it's going over there. The same thing with like, sniper hairs, you gotta way off to the side. And just trying to put what you said sort of in a layman's terms, hopefully that painted a picture.
But that was really where it started. I started writing a little bit for Pyramid Magazine, and then I more or less kept doing it. I wound up publishing, I think, 13 or 14 articles through Steve Jackson games with Pyramid. I managed to hit, I think, every single alternate GURPS issue. I think there were 5 of them. And I was in the last issue, Pyramid 3120. But that was kind of, they're very picky about how you write and how you format. And grammar, and I was never a poor writer, but they really helped me get better at it. And they published my first book.
Oh, sweet.
I always thought that grappling, because I'd done some martial arts, and I thought that grappling had been, it's legendary for how bad the rules are. And I always thought that if you could take all the complexities of sword fighting or unarmed striking combat and roll 1d20 plus a bonus against an armor class if you hit roll damage, you really ought to not have to break out a 700-page flowchart to grapple, right? There should be a way to do it. And so I had a thought, well, what if you did the same thing? Roll your hit roll against whatever difficulty or target number or whatever. And if you hit, roll damage, except the damage type is control. More control relative to your foe's ability or strength, strength and size, has more and more impact. And in Gurps in particular, there are lots of ways of doing that. And so that was the genesis of Gurps Martial Arts Technical Grappling, which was my first book. And it was not presented as well as I would have done it now. And you had to read the whole thing in order to get it, so you could read it again to play it. And that's not really how you should write a book. But the concepts were good, and I wound up turning it into Dungeons and Dragons rules with my first Kickstarter. And that was called Dungeon Grappling.
Oh, right on.
And that was the product that proved that I could run a Kickstarter and at least break even, because that was my objective there was not make money. It was always make money, but my objective there was to try and run the project properly, on time, on budget, get everyone their stuff quickly, and I did. And so that was the beginning of Gaming Ballistic as a company. Was that Kickstarter in late 2016 or early 2017?
Right on. So now I have more kickstarting questions, because we're going to talk about what's on the horizon for you. But staying with format for the moment. So how long up until now have you been creating this content? Like, you just glossed over a lot of work, and I kind of lost track of the sense of time frame. How many? I
want to say my first magazine articles were in the 2003 or 4 range. But I really ought to say that, because yes, that was when I started writing, but I was play testing a great deal between grad school, which ended for me in 1998, and when I started writing around the time that 4th edition came out in 2004.
Now, when you say play testing, you're talking about play testing your own stuff or play testing for another company?
Play testing for CJ. So I would go on the forums, and they had these open things, and like for say, Gurps Martial Arts, there's a volume. You read the book, you comment on the book. Well, maybe we should change this rule or whatever. And I was play tester and I did some editing for the World War II series. I edited and helped with Sean Fisher's Hand of Steel, which is about special operations in World War II. There was a bunch of stuff that I've got my credits there. But that was kind of how I got to know the Steve Jackson Games crowd, and they liked me working with them. I liked their stuff. I got more and more into Gurps from '89 until now. And so, but that was and then I was lead playtester for Gurps High Tech. So I basically was the playtest manager, facilitating all of the comments and because I somewhere in my gaming life, I snuck in a couple of years as a consultant for McKinsey and Company, and a career in process control and process design and for disk drives. So that was my day job up until summer of 2020, when that was no longer my day job.
So what about recreation? I'm spotting a wicked Viking looking axe and shield in the background here, but they're not hanging on the wall. They're leaning up.
not.
They're on the floor, leaning up against the wall, which denotes possibly crafting by you or usage by you.
I did make them, and I use them this very day.
Yeah. Did you want to turn the chair so we could show at least the
Oh,
visual?
sure. Yeah. So this is an axe by Grimfrost, which I did not make.
Okay.
But this is a Type 15 sword and buckler sword that I made out of hickory.
Okay.
And this is my Viking style training sword. To grip by the pommel, because the grips of these Viking swords are really tiny. And a mostly authentic Viking style round shield. You can see how thin that is. It's about 8 millimeters at the core, maybe 5 millimeters up front. We think that you kind of hold it like this, not like this, because it rotates really easy.
Okay.
Anyway, so
yeah, it looks like it's got the hub on the center, the little stick out nib on the center.
It's called the boss.
Yeah, slap it around the side of the boat and then grab it when you're ready to board, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, very cool.
But yeah, so the thing is that I had done Korean martial arts. I had done a little bit of Aikido. I had done a lot of punchy kicky stuff, katanas and kendo or whatever. But when 5th edition came out, I realized that in talking to people that it seemed to me that when you have something as large as a round shield or whatever, that +1 or +2 to armor class just didn't cut how well protected you were. Because that's a 5 or 10% chance of delta in being hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, but I'd never used a shield. I'd never virtually I'd never held a shield. Certainly not one that wasn't, a foam LARP shield, or somebody took a 3/4 or 1/2 inch piece of plywood and said, "Raw shield," right? I'd never held any of that, and I certainly didn't know how to use a sword in the way that maybe you see. So I went around looking for a historical European martial arts center, and happened to find the Ostfolk Viking martial arts thing, because it's Minnesota, the Vikings.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, this guy's Arthur is connected to Roland Warzeka, who is, an historian and an artist, and he tries to recreate all of these old styles, and they travel to museums. Anyway, so I fell into this really interesting crowd that was determined to reproduce the equipment the way that the historical finds are made, and figure out from that, because our ancestors aren't stupid. They did things for different reasons than we have done. But if they have a short grip, or if they have this spinny light, because that shield is 6 pounds, it's quite light and nimble, but it's got hide. It's got animal hide on the front and back, so it's remarkably robust. I've seen some tests where you hit it with a 2-handed axe, and it's fine. Now, you don't want to get hit by a 2-handed anything. And so there's a lot of fencing to it rather than just sitting there slamming. Now, are we right? Who knows? Right? We don't know. That's one of the interesting things about it. So, it's not like you show up and you have this curriculum and you bow and you have honor and whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that. My wife is a martial arts instructor in the style that we did for.
No, you're more like James Bond's Q. You're like the engineers that are like taking apart, redesigning, reverse engineering something and going, how effective is this? How is it wielded? Yeah. No, I think we're
exactly,
following.
And in any case, it was really interesting, because the way that we're being trained to use this is you hold the shield out in front of you, kind of edge on, and it's shield, more shield. I'm grappling with the shield. I'm manipulating the other guy's defenses until I see an opening where I can strike and not be struck, and I hit him wherever his armor isn't. Although in much of the Viking era, there was metal poor, and so you didn't have to worry about going around armor. And anyway, so blah, 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 manipulate, boom. And I was like, wow, that is an entirely different perspective than +1 or +2 to armor class. And so I started thinking game wise, well, what would that look like? And lo and behold, I came back to my grappling concepts where, okay, I'm going to attack you with a grappling attack and do control points. And then when I have them, I can spend them to reduce your ability to defend. And that's like, now I've yet to actually implement that as the primary way that you're fencing or whatever is control or positioning or any of that stuff. Because while that makes for a fight that you can walk away from, that you're training in, we rolled dice for 10 minutes and then one blow was exchanged does not necessarily make for a great game.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you want to do stuff. And so because of that, I haven't really found a way to make that concept sing. I haven't necessarily looked that hard, but for people who want to say, oh, I'm going to turn my edge and do a sword bind, or I'm going to push my shield onto the other guy in order to throw him offline or open him up or whatever. The concepts that have been refined ever since I put them in technical grappling and then dungeon grappling, and then somewhere around here I managed. So this is progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
A few years back, I took all of my concepts from all of the very much too long grappling books, and I distilled them from 50 pages to 8 pages and made it better. And that was for the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game, a little thing called Fantastic Dungeon Grappling.
You know, I'm still trying to get over how awesome this logo looks, because I'm trying to. So much of what we talked about, people are visualizing as you're describing it, but of course they can't see unless you go to our Rollmongers Podcast Network YouTube page or are watching us live on Twitch. They can't see what you're holding up. But
okay.
I have a point here. Just bear with me here. So the gaming logo that you got here is looking down a sniper scope at 3 6-sided blue dice, and it's homed on like in between them. It says Gaming Ballistic. And you were just talking about what you have produced and like the story of getting there mathematically. Can I ask you, like, where can we find, like, this is a brand, Gaming Ballistic, right? Where can we find you so that people can look at this stuff on social media? Like, do you have your own website? Where can we, where can we find all this stuff?
I do. So I'm at gamingballistic.com. Is my primary website. It's a blog, it's a store. You can also find my products on Drive-Thru RPG.
Okay.
Warehouse and Warehouse 23. That's pretty much the three. You can, and every now and then you'll find them in stores, because I some of my books, not a ton, but some of my books are in distribution.
No, is this under Douglas Cole, or is this under Gaming Ballistic? Because a lot of people
under Gaming Ballistic.
Okay, because a lot of people have their new brand. It's like, oh, that thing I wrote 10 years ago that's our bestseller, that's technically owned by this, or so I'm just making sure that.
So Steve Jackson Games owns the technical grappling book, but all the other things that I've mentioned, and I think I'm up to about 24 products by now. All the other things that I've mentioned are under Gaming Ballistic. It was funny. I after having all of these thoughts and concepts about shields and talked to Tim Shorts of Gothridge Manor, he had a very, very long, fun rant about short and long rests in 5th edition. And I was like, I started to tinker, because I do. And pretty soon I had something that I thought was pretty cool with as a modification of 5th edition, and I was going to write just a little quick news, a quick write-up for my blog, and then WotC came out with the DM's Guild, the SRD, and shortly, like a week or so thereafter, came out with the OGL, or I guess it had already been OGL, but had made it applicable to 5th edition.
Yeah.
And so what was originally going to be like, a 1,500 or 5,000 word article very rapidly ballooned into 400,000 words of text, 400,000 words, 800 pages of a full game system. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do Dragon Heresy because I had these rules for combat, and I thought they were really cool, kind of a half step between GURPS and 5th edition that had a little more verisimilitude, and you could do some of the cooler things with shields, and that's where the dungeon grappling system really came into its own and whatever. And then someone said, "Oh, you really ought to reach out to this big RPG personality because he's done great stuff, and he'll tell you how to get this done." And so I did. And he's like, "Yeah, you're stupid. This is crazy talk. You've never run a Kickstarter. You're looking at 3 250-page books. It's going to cost you 150 grand. Do you have that? Can you afford to do that? What are your credentials to impress the buying public that, the equivalent to, your guy in your pajamas in a basement somewhere can bring this to life and is worth your money?" And I was like, well, if I'm going to go get advice, I should probably listen to it. So instead of rushing into the machine gun fire, that's where my dungeon grappling book came out. And then I tried another one with an adventure. But my third project was Dragon Heresy, 288-page, full color, level 1 through 5, 5th edition mod.
I gotta say, that's a handsome looking book. I really like the cover of that. It looks elegant.
So this was done by. So remember how I said I fell in with the Viking martial arts crowd?
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that Roland Warzeka, German gentleman, one of the primary proponents of this particular style of fighting, is an extraordinarily talented commercial artist. And every weapon on that cover he owns personally. And the woman decapitating the hobgoblin is his wife. And the hobgoblin and all the other hobgoblins are him. That's his face, although he doesn't actually have green skin. But he went out and posed, and they did an image, and he did that for me. I paid him as the single most expensive piece of art I've commissioned. But yes, it was a fun cover. It's a good book. I was working with another great artist at the time.
I just want to interrupt you for one moment because a lot of people say, well, why wouldn't you go on Fiverr? My son my 21-year-old son spent practically his entire tax return on a tablet, like an actual virtual tablet with a pen.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how difficult it is to do posing, because when you get things like in a swing or whatever, like a three-dimensional pose, without having a limb look too small, too fat, too far away, everything, it's very, very difficult. So what you proposed that the gentleman did, taking an actual still shot and then re-rendering it, is a great idea. And it's probably worth the money if you go down that avenue, because a lot of our listeners, I know they kind of get into the, I've got no money, but there's so much talented artist. Oh, I'm such a genius. I will help an up and coming artist who I personally selected and like their style, because they're not going to pick crap, and do a commission and pay them a couple $100, and they will get exposure, and I get a decently cheap piece of art for a couple $100, and everyone's happy or whatever. Yeah, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is that other side, that graphic side, that digital art, whether it's from scratch or, like I said, you need a model, like you buy those little Robaxa set wooden dolls and pose them, take photographs, or use them as a visual reference. And there's a lot to it, and a lot of time and equipment. And that's why, you get what you pay for. And sorry, I just want to give a shout out to that gentleman that did that, because my son is learning that type of thing, and he spends hours and hours, poring over this type of thing. And I have a lot of respect for, the artistic community that have the time and the inspiration to sit down and try to put inspiration, vision to page.
And the art is, you get a lot of opinions, but I'll give you mine. The art is what lets your vision explode in the mind of someone else. I am very happy with the art team that I've put together. I've got about a dozen people that I work with. But there's nothing like coming to, like, you're not supposed to love your children differently, but I love my book, Citadel at Nordvorn, which was my second dungeon fantasy role-playing game book.
Oh, you know what? I think I've got something a little larger I can
Yeah.
I can splash up here. Oh, sorry, it's the same artwork. This is Delvers to Grow.
It is. I reuse. Yeah, I reuse. So that's one of the great things about commissioning art is that you can reuse it. I did. I reused for my upcoming Kickstarter, which we'll get to sometime later. The art for the cover of Citadel Nordvorn, but a lot of the interior art has been brought to life in a way that really makes you feel the setting.
Oh yeah, this looks like a. Yeah. If I could, because I'm always trying to explain a couple of things that you're going on about for the podcasting audience, so they can visualize. Okay, in a movie, when they stretch a shot, the person's in a hallway and they're coming to a realization. They have a blank face, and the hallway extends back behind them, and you hear that. Okay. In battle, they do it forward. You're looking forward, and the camera shoots across the field and grabs something far away, lets you focus on it, and then drags you back. And it's not an arrow shot. It's supposed to be the person's mind going, I can really see or guess what's up there trying to get me. And you've got this tumble on a road on the side, like there looks like a wooden fence, the stake wooden fence in the way in the background. There's some obscurity on the right, and then coming around you got a couple of gray giants or whatever. There's horses being flipped and kicked, and your perspective is like, we are back up the road, not quite there yet. There's someone half deciding, listening to the guy that's yelling at you, about to charge, maybe a woman. And then the most keen thing is your typical Viking with the T-strap over the nose, metal helmet, all blonde, got his beard on, and he's peeking at you, and he's giving you the hand wave with the finger curl going, "Hey, let's go this way, hey!" Right? And that's what really grabs me, was the expression in the moment of like what everyone's thinking, and time is frozen, and you want that moment to play forward. And the only way to do it is to play the game.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in this particular, one of my favorite parts about this book is that while it has many adventure seeds in it, it is not by itself an adventure. It is a snapshot of a moment in time in the setting at this citadel. The fortress is on one side of this huge gorge, and on the other side is the town. And the dwarves built a bridge like this, something that we'd see in modern times, built a bridge across the gorge, and you have the upper town, the lower town, and the citadel. And then downriver, there's another town called called Einferl, which means river bend. And a little farther down is Longbrew, which means long bridge, because it's like a mile-long bridge across this river that gets to the wall, because there's got to be a wall, into where the dragons live, because there's got to be a place where dragons live. And if you go up past the citadel, up to the left, you have the fairy domains, the Frost Harrow, and there's all kinds of stuff that could go on. And in the back, I have one of my favorite tools for doing game prep is called a mind map.
Okay, it looks like the proverbial flow chart where it's like if A, B, and
what it is. That's right. It's a relationship map. And it has people, it has places, it has factions. It's got a red line if the factions are opposed to each other. It's got a green line if they're allies, and just a regular line if they know each other but they're neutral. And with a map like that, you can play for hours and hours and hours unscripted, because every time the players interact with one of these boxes, they're probably making a friend and pissing off somebody, but they don't know. Right, you're interacting with this, and you've sent ripples through this spider web of relationships, and so 2, 3, 4 days later, the cult is going to come after you because they don't want you allied with this noble, because they have plans for that noble, and you're powerful people, and you could upset their plans, so they're going to attack you preemptively. Right, and so I really, a lot of people who come and say, "Oh, you've done the setting." I'm like, "Yes, they have." They're like, "Where should I start?" I'm like, "Well, if you want to just start off with a quest, start off with Hall of Judgment. But if you want to have a lot of things that you can do, start off with Citadel at Nordvorn because it's a fantastic little mini setting and there's a lot going on, and people who have done so have had a lot of fun with it. Actually, I think I read a blog with someone who's playing through this, and they managed to spring the super important daughter of one of the nobles, and I'm fairly sure that there's a wedding in the future, and this is going to cause all kinds of problems because the daughter, the father was a noble and he made some bad deals with fairy because that's the only kind of deal you can make with a fairy, and she was involved but she didn't know it, and blah 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 blah, and so it's just rippling, and they're in so deep in multiple levels, and is all they know is we got the pretty girl out of Nordvorn, and yay, and it's going to go so badly.
They don't know what's coming.
And it's just wonderful, right? It's got all kinds of stuff, but they're powerful. I mean, the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game introduces you to probably what's 8th to 12th level in 5th edition terms. You're mighty.
Okay.
And so it doesn't mean that they're hopeless. It just means that there's a lot coming at them that they don't know. And it's a great, I really enjoy it, and it's got a lot of character, and I did some research onto Viking customs, and it's kind of Disney Vikings, right? It's not historical because we don't know.
Yeah, you got to put that up front. Like this is a fantasy adaptation,
fantasy role
like inspired by that. And you when you start using historical terms, people are like, oh, you got the history wrong. It's like, no, you're still playing a game. So this is deep diving into what you've got out, but I know you want to talk about what's coming. So let's talk about your latest Kickstarter.
There is some of that. So in order to talk about my latest Kickstarter, which is called Delvers to Grow.
Okay.
And it launches tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
And this is the shot that I put up and described, and you'd sorry, I got up there too quickly. Sorry, it was
no.
You flashed the book, and I got confused with the artwork, man. Sorry.
you and I are approaching 50. Going off too quickly is just something that we have to deal with.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, leaving that aside.
Oh wait, what? Wait a minute, what?
Yeah, wait a minute.
We're talking about role playing, right? All right.
So here's the thing. I love Gurps, and I've been playing it since 1989. However, Gurps is what one might refer to as a subtractive system. You have a wall of material, and you have to chip away all of the things that are not your game. In addition, once you've done that, in order to make a character, it's a point buy system. So you start spending this currency on things, and you look through your books and whatever, in order to get to where you're going. Historically, this can take a long time, especially if you are not super well versed in the myriad different rules, and you may not be well versed in the genre, right? So you might not know the fantasy tropes. You might not know almost everyone knows the Star Wars tropes, but let's say you're deciding to play Krull, right? First of all, you have to be old enough to have seen the movie. You have to have survived its unique take on the fantasy milieu, and you have to know what the tropes are there. And so what I thought was, if some expert, and I know several, I don't claim to be that expert. There are people at this who are better than me, and I found Kevin, who has written several books for me before. But what I wanted to do is be able to, first of all, I wanted to be able to have the game master introduce the game at a lower point value than the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game asks you to do. The box set, if I could grab it, the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game box set is a glorious piece of work by Steve Jackson Games. It is a distillation of the 4th edition GURPS rules into only the things that are really needed to do a dungeon crawl.
Okay.
So you won't be paging through basic and say, well, do I need guns, pistol? in my dungeon fantasy role? Well, no. Right. And so what Sean did was he did the chiseling for you and took out everything that was not hack and slash, killing monsters and taking their stuff. And my setting is in that rule set. However, what I thought that we could do is reduce the number of choices. And the C. Jackson Games recently re-released the Fantasy Trip in yet another glorious box set. The thing about TFT is it's the kind of game where you can sit down at lunch, in the lunch hour in high school, make a character in like 5 or 10 minutes, and then fight. And you spend 35 minutes trying to kill each other with your swords and stuff. And then the next day you start over because it takes so little time to make a character that you can just get playing. And I thought to myself, well, Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game is a fairly circumscribed thing. You have these templates, which are totally not race and class, that help guide niches. The weapon guy who's the knight, the big guy with the axe, the barbarian who's the outdoorsy guy. You've got your thief, you've got your wizard, you got whatever. So it's not really class because it is still point buy, but it's heavily influenced by niche protection in character generation. I was like, what if you had someone who didn't want to play a 250 point character? Because those guys are so capable, it can get complicated. And it's hard for the game master to challenge 4 to 6 250 point GURPS characters. So I said, well, I want to do low points. And I also want to do this in a way that gets you to the table very, very fast. And I talked with Kevin and I said, this is kind of what I want to do. And you could see, hear, or read in his chats, he's like, he got it. He totally got what I was saying. And so we drew up a contract and he started writing. And we got an early draft. It wasn't complete, but we got it out to a blind test. So people who were not involved with the project, but you had a good game master, and he invited I think about a half dozen people, and they didn't start. They showed, they said, "Oh, come at this time, but don't have a character ready." And so they went through the book and had characters ready, and in less than an hour, and most of that hour was waiting for people to show up because they were late. They were ready to go, and they started what they called the meat grinder, and they attacked a castle from one of my other setting books. And people were getting wasted and shot with arrows and boiling pitch. And the key is when your character died, make a new one right there at the table. And by and large, you'd go around the table, you wouldn't quite be done, you'd go around the table, and you'd be ready to fight. So in one missed turn, you could start with an entirely new character. And at the 125 or 150 point level that they were testing the system at. And that's more or less unheard of for powered by GURPS or GURPS. It usually takes longer than that. So what this Delvers to Grow, is a modular character building system that will allow you to get to the table as soon as there's interest in playing and not have to come back in a week or two when people have their characters ready. And I'm very excited about this. I really think that it will, and the lower point value means that you don't have quite such an analysis paralysis. You don't have to think about the 32 things that a character with broadsword 22, really high broadsword skill, can do. Oh, should I rapid strike? Should I attack to the chinks in armor? Should I cut to the leg? Should I? Well, at lower point levels, you're like, I'm going to hit the guy. Yay. And it gives you a better intro to the rules because you're only going to exploit one or two cool bits at once.
Yeah, like a
really high point value, you can do all of them.
Like a basic intro, and then basic demo.
And the other thing is, and this is the other tagline, starting at 10th or 12th level is cool and all, but there's an awful lot of fun play to be had starting at Schlub, right?
Oh yeah.
Start at a low point henchman and fight your way to the epic level. And that 0 to hero play is
the concept of a 0 level character where they haven't even picked their class does have a strong appeal. And what you're suggesting is they have a class or whatever, but like from the ground up.
Right. That's right. And now you can't do true 0 level. Well, you could, I guess, but there's not much point in getting steered to 0. What this does at the lowest entry level, which is 62 points, you're a little bit of a cut above, and you'll choose a couple of disadvantage packages that kind of inform the personality. Because really, a disadvantage is a constraint, right? I always rush in to save the damsel or gentleman in distress. If I see a dragon, I just gotta kill him, right? It's Hiccup, right? If I see a dragon, I just gotta kill it.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have that sort of thing. Or I'm a disciple of the arcane arts, or I'm a follower of Scothy, the Snow Queen, Norse god of winter, whatever. But then you choose a basic package, the sort of entry level knight, which means, you got some fighty, you got a little bit of this, you got a little bit of that. And then you start play. And then as you go to the next level, instead of just the basic package, you get the basic and the advanced training package. And I think you might get one upgrade package, which would be like, oh, I'm really good with weapons, or I'm sneaky, or whatever. And then at the 187 point level, you get the basic, the advanced, and like 2 upgrade packages, but all your stats are better. And you spent some more foundation points. So you walking towards that 250 point level, but in order to get to play, you say, what's my template? What's my basic package? And if you pick your basic and you have to pick an advanced, that decision is made for you. You just write it down. What 1 or 2 or 3 upgrades do I want? Now we play.
And you just go.
You just go. And that is something that, because GURPS is a bit of a subtractive system, because point buy, in theory, a 250 point character, you never would, but you theoretically could make 250 or more individual decisions. That would be dumb. That would be inefficient. No one does that. But in a point buy system, it's, well, if I'm spending points on this, I'm not spending points on this. Oh, I want to buy this skill. Oh, that never really comes up in play. That's a trap option, whatever. And so what Kevin has done is said, this is a mainstream, right down the middle, effective, playable thing that you will be able to grow organically into whatever epic monster slayer you want, but it gives you a way to get to the table fast. And if your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friend, your coworker, whatever, you're like, hey, let's do this GURPS thing because I know how to run it, or let's play. It's like, oh, well, I like the sound of that. Oh, I want to play a martial artist. I'm going to take the martial arts basic, martial arts advanced, and the boot to the head upgrade, which means that there's nothing you can't kick. Right. and then right, and you and if you're there, you can even sing the song boot to the head.
Yeah, boot to the head. Yo, I know 4 on the floor, dude. I know 4 on the floor.
Right. Anyway, so that's the thing, is that instead of saying, oh, well, let me drag out all these books, you'll still need the rules eventually, but the stuff that he's done makes it so that everything that you're choosing has been assembled for you, and the names of the things that you're going through are evocative enough that you know what you're getting. And so you don't have to worry about broadsword this and shield this and knife this and whatever. You pick the package that says Sir Cuisinart, and you know what you're getting. You're getting someone who's really good with blades, right?
Yeah.
Or you pick the package that says "Axe me again." I'm making this up.
You did just selling me on the name. Like, is this stuff in there, or you just?
It's gonna be.
It's good. It has to be now. I'm sorry, Kevin, if you're watching or listening. This is gonna be canon.
But he'll give me the manuscript. He's almost done. He was gonna finish up the manuscript today.
Well, I gotta say, I think he's gonna give us trouble for like revealing a little bit too much. I have been speaking with Douglas Cole from Gaming Ballistic, and I have a feeling that we're gonna be talking for hours as soon as this episode is done, and we'll have to have you back, but maybe in a more just sort of a geeking out discussion as opposed to me going toe to toe, drilling you with your questions. But I do have a couple of quick ones to end our show. First of all, do you have merchandise for Gaming Ballistic? Because I love this logo, and where can we find it?
I only started doing this as my day job really this year. I had something to finish up. I got laid off last year in 2020, like many people, and I talked to my wife, and I was like, I'd like to try Gaming Ballistic for real. Like, this is it. And we came up with, if we can do X or Y in terms of revenue and income, that, yeah, let's do this. And so I don't yet have merchandise. I have a single Gaming Ballistic sweatshirt that I wear to conventions.
Okay.
But I think I need to change that.
Well, you can slap your logo on teespring.com and then, like, you know, just go nuts. But that's before you get into third party, it's a personal choice. Yeah. Which brings me to my last question, because we've already talked about your latest projects in the future. What, if you don't mind me asking, because gamers come from all walks of life. They're not just 40-old something dudes living in mom's basement. So I love asking this question. What did you do for a living, sir?
So for going on 20 years, so I got a PhD in polymer physics. And then I segued into consulting for a couple of years, but then I got a job doing process development for a disk drive company. And I was working as first a process development engineer and then a product deployment liaison and then a development manager. So for the better part of 5 or 7 or 8 years, I was helping design equipment that put the diamond-like carbon coating on disk drive heads or other etch depth atomic level stuff, where we had to control the application of very pure elements onto a disk drive head to tolerances measured in parts of atoms.
Oh, okay. One last question. It's been bugging me since you mentioned the actual logistics and ballistics of the shield on the angle. What's the TV show where they take 2 ancient warriors? Is it called Ancient Warrior? And then they have the gel dummy and they test the weapons and they're trying to figure out how effective the weapons were. They dig up your expert that knows a little, if not a lot, about the actual historical weapon.
Exactly what you're talking about. And I'm blanking on it.
Okay, so it's not just me because
something warrior.
Okay, Deadliest Warrior.
Deadliest Warrior.
Okay. Because it really should be our favorite show. The two of us, and yet it's like neither one. I was kind of hoping you could save me because it's like I can't remember this show. It's killing me because as soon as you started moving your hands around talking about the shield, it's like, man, you could totally take the aspect of the Deadliest Warrior show and not go with like shooting a target and then they do their simulation in the computer and then they do the little reenactment of how a battle would look between a ninja and a Spartan or whatever. But just educate the masses on like the Hollywood style of stage fighting and the Hollywood style of a martial artist. That flow isn't necessarily, you know, how the day was won, you know, back in the day. But I guess we'll just have to have you back on the show in the future. Thank you so much, Douglas Cole, everyone, from Gaming Ballistic, not Ballistic Gaming, Gaming Ballistic.
Ballistic Gaming is actually an entirely different website.
You got to watch out for this guy because it sounds like he has Gurps by the Gurps and is looking to change things for faster play and more fun play. And we will see you next time on Attack of Opportunity. Say bye, Doug.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoyed the discussion. I hope to come back again.
Dude, you've been a great guest. Just put a quarter in you and go. I've had so much fun listening to you, and we hope to have you back soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.